Like,
what am I supposed to do now?
so funny.
Welcome to Trust the Journey. I'm Jason Moletsky.
And I'm Melanie Curtis.
Our mission is to live, laugh, love, and learn together with you.
The laughing's already starting today. We are here to create conscious connections, family, to grow and contribute through our practice of openness, honesty, vulnerability, humility, and trust, trusting the entire journey.
If you want to find us on the internet, our website is trustthejourney.today. That will get you directly to where you can listen to this podcast. You can purchase Amazon merchandise like t-shirts or hoodies. You can find us on Facebook or Instagram at the same, trustthejourney.today. You could also join on Patreon if you would like to support us. We would really, really appreciate your support. It goes a long way in helping us to produce this show. And if you decide to support us on Patreon, that at any amount whatsoever, that does qualify you to become a member of the Trust the Journey family, where we have a private Facebook group in which we have a safe space for everybody and anybody who is part of the family to share anything that's going on with themselves as vulnerably and confidently as they like, because we know that you're going to be supported by your family that's in there. And it's a beautiful space. It's a beautiful group of people. And so a huge thanks to all of our listeners who are part of the Trust the Journey family. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being part of our group. We love you. And we really mean that because it's a real thing. So thank you for being part of the family.
We do. It's so true. I love all of that you just shared. All true. Yeah, so right on, family. Let's dive in today. Today we are talking about the best books that we've read in the last year, because we are pretty voracious consumers of epic content. At least I am. Jay's nodding his head. Yes, we both are. And so we liked this idea since we've talked about our favorite books in the past, and there's just always new things being added to the list. And I'm just going to kick it right off because I am just blown away by a book that I read recently called The Body Keeps the Score by...
It's in my list.
Yeah, by Bessel van der Kolk. And it's just off the charts powerful to understand how trauma is held in the body, how it can poison us, how it can block us, and how we can start to look at ways to process that trauma from our bodies. And it's just so powerful to really understand the mind-body connection so much more. And I've always believed that. I've always been a very physical person and also very cognitive. So it's been a really beautiful evolution over the last X number of years for me as a person, exploring my mind-body connection, but to learn that much more about trauma healing and trauma processing, and also just to understand how it gets locked up in our bodies. It's just, anyway, I could go on and on. It's just fascinating, and it meant a lot to me. And I've shared it with almost every client and friend I have.
So I have a couple of comments on a question. First, it's in my book. It's in my Audible right now, waiting on me to read. My book consuming habit is one where if somebody recommends a good book to me, if I get a good solid recommendation, what I do is I go ahead and I click it and I put it in my Audible so that it's in there. I've purchased it and it's waiting. I either do that with Audible books or paper, physical, hardback books. I'll buy them and put them on the shelf, even if I know I don't have time or intention to get to it right now, because if I keep it handy, I'll pick it up when the time is right and I'll dive into it. Maybe it's on that road trip or that long flight, or when I'm sitting waiting, whenever, or some evenings, who knows. But the other comment I wanted to make with regards to The Body Keeps the Score is I am a huge fan of the concept that all of our memory is not in our mind, right? We do not, I have not read the book. I have zero knowledge of what's in the book.
And I'm no expert.
And I do know, I am an expert on personal trauma. I've been through tons, right? I have experience in the field. Yeah, personal trauma, right?
Trauma. I thought you said drama. That's why I was laughing. Sorry.
You're the drama queen.
Like, I do know personal trauma. That's, sorry, listeners. I thought he said drama. Okay, go on. Sorry.
No, so physical trauma, injury that we sustain as, a blunt force impact, right? Like say I smack into a pole and I'm walking along, I get a big bump on my noggin, right? There's the results of that trauma are obvious and visible. I can see them with my eyes, okay? When they're on the external part of the body, they're easy to recognize. When they're internal, other people can't see them as much unless we're showing the signs of them, right? Mm-hmm. So somebody might see a black eye or a big bump on my head and be like, ooh, you were in an accident, right? But somebody can't necessarily look and see that I broke my back recently or that I tore my shoulder out of the socket a few months ago, but I can sort of feel them. They're mm-hmm. resonating inside. Those are physical traumas where we had some kind of a damage to our meat bag that we live in of a body, right? The emotional traumas, the mental traumas, the feelings, the things where our feelings were hurt or where we suffered some way that isn't necessarily visible to others on the outside of our body. It's internal. I don't even think, personally, I don't believe these reside in our mind, in our brain, right? I personally believe that these memories live in our entire body head to toe, just like any other kind of injury or trauma lives in our body head to toe. And I'm going to spin this back around is mm-hmm. since I'm one of these guys who always puts it back to this topic. Since I started doing ayahuasca and psilocybin ceremonies, mm-hmm. I started realizing that the whole function of these ceremonies is to literally get these traumas out, get the memories out that are stored in our cells.
Yes.
And get them out all different ways. And they come out of because we're pretty gross. We're like bags of guts and poo, right? We're pretty gross. Right. The way we get things out is we pee them out, we poo them out, we cry them out, we snot them out, we spit them out, we sweat them out, right? They come out of our pores. They come out of all of our orifices. Mm-hmm. All the things that are inside come out through all the different parts of our body. So, I'm excited to read this book because I want to know about what's in there as far as cleansing, as far as releasing these things. Like, what are the practices? We can breathe them out. You can scream them out, mm-hmm. right? I've certainly done a fair share of that myself. So give me some of your personal relationship to this book and some of these types of releasing the things that are in your body or how the body has kept the score for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I certainly echo that about ceremony and the phenomenal bodily processing of trauma through that modality. Couldn't agree with that more. I was recently talking with a friend about the plant medicine and stuff like that, and about this concept of the body holding stuff and us not necessarily being able to see everything and yada, yada. And not everybody certainly is ready for, or is it a plant medicine ceremony isn't appropriate for everyone. It's not the right fit for processing for everybody. So that's one thing, but it's also that cognitive therapy also, in my experience, is not enough. It's not enough, not even close. It's super amazing. It's a critical spoke on the wheel, but like I can absolutely attest that I did a ton of cognitive therapy and I mean like coaching, I mean landmark, I mean different types of life coaching stuff, actual therapy, lots of talk processing. And that worked very well for me to a certain point. And then I got to a point where I was like, fuck, like I've done so much fucking work. Like, what am I still missing in this area of my life where I'm still having challenge, right? Like, what am I still missing that I'm still so sad about this? Or I'm so afraid of being alone, or I'm still, like the things that I was still working on, right? And that stuff, the only way I started to really access those things is by going into experiential trauma processing, which connected to my body. So yeah, ceremony, yeah, like big goals and movement, things that I would do with movement. But I'm just scratching the surface personally of this type of experiential healing. And obviously, I've talked about this a lot on the show about the plant medicine, and that's been such a big, big part of it. But so is meditating, so is like those things. But there's more that I want to explore as it relates to movement, my physical body movement, and disconnecting from my cognitive self as much as I'm able to connect to flow in some kind of movement healing experience. So like, I don't, again, like I'm no expert. I don't really know what that's going to look like, but I'm definitely heading in the direction of my own growth of wanting to have more experiential therapeutic things, like experiences, period, where it's less cognitive, just so that I can really see, like, is this as legit as I think, which I believe it will be? And what type of transformation will I get out of that? Will that help me access the things that are still sort of stuck in me,
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for all the modalities, right? Like,
Definitely.
there's a book that I'm in right now that is teaching me. I was just going to reach for it, and I realized it's on the table that I don't have right in front of me. But it's about learning about the gut, right? And it's about learning about our how our flora of all the bacteria and fungus and viruses and all the things that work inside of us work together as a holistic system, right? And so that key point is that there's no one modality that is going to fix whatever's broken. We are a whole being, right?
Yeah.
So if we have a trauma, or we have some memory, some scar, some damage that was caused at some point in time, and it's still with us, and we haven't let it go, we're still holding on to it. It's like we literally are retaining this experience in some physical form, whether that be an energetic form, whatever form we're representing it in, we're carrying it around. And those healing actions I strongly believe they cannot be isolated to a single area and expect to heal all of them. Like talk therapy is a great form of therapy, right?
Totally.
I absolutely advocate for talk therapy. But I also advocate getting outside and running until you fall over from exhaustion, that type of physical therapy is just as powerful as any other, So the what's come up with one was when I was talking with Shannon a while ago, and she's like, scream at the top of your lungs if you need to.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
and I did.
Good.
I did.
Oh,
And
express.
oh my God, it like roaring and like screaming and crying, like letting out letting things out, man. It's so powerful. So all the ways, whether it's in being quiet or whether it's in crying or whether it's in just talking and sharing or whatever. I'm excited to read this book.
Yeah, totally. And we can move on, but just to quickly give just some insight into what it covers, which again, I can't even scratch the surface of what it covers, but meaning in terms of trauma, it covers a whole range of things. It covers pretty intense traumas that maybe some of us don't have access to. Maybe everyone listening has access to, who knows? But they talk a lot about vets and PTSD. They talk a lot about sexual assault and rape. They talk a lot about childhood trauma. They talk a lot about childhood abuse. They talk a lot about car accidents. So like those are sort of hardy traumas that people can have. And I also always like to invite people to, if none of those big, quote unquote, big ticket items have happened to you, it doesn't mean that you don't have any trauma. It means that maybe you don't remember it, or maybe it's something from your childhood. Maybe it's accumulated small traumas that accumulate into a bigger impact on your body and your psyche. So it's always worth looking into this stuff, even if we don't think that it's for us. So that's all I'm going to say to invite people to read it.
I think that almost every time, as soon as we think something's not for us, it's for us.
Totally, right? That's not for me. That's
so
not for me.
irritating.
Oh, that's not me. It's like, oh, geez.
Yeah.
That's a blind spot
Anytime
for all of us.
As soon as there's a resistance, like, then we're like, oh yeah, that's the one we probably need the most.
I love it. Well, what's one that's on your list, my friend?
Well, this is a reread for me. I read it about 2 years ago, I think, and I actually failed to complete it. And I went back to it recently in a new form. So the book is Getting Things Done by David Allen.
Nice.
And the initial audiobook is, I think, 10 and a half, 11 hours, something like that. It's a fairly lengthy listen for the type of book that it is, which is educational training, kind of like system function, learning how to do better at creating operational systems for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I am a huge fan, let me say, of leaning on experts in their field, people who have dedicated their lives and their point of focus of what they care about to a specific area of learning. I cannot possibly hope to be better at learning a system or creating a system for myself better than somebody else has come along with if they've made that their area of expertise. So the way for me to become the best holistic system is to go to all the best people in their areas and learn what they've learned from them. So David Allen, Getting Things Done, the expert in his field, world-renowned author for this topic, GTD. And I struggled to get through the 10-hour version. I went back to Audible because Audible is where I consume my material primarily.
Me too.
And then I found another version that comes in at 2 hours and 40 minutes, where
Nice.
he's shortened it to a more consumable
Cool.
amount, which is great because to me, that made a huge difference. I'm able to plug through 3 hours of listening in a couple days. No problem. In between other things. When I go for a run, get some exercise, I've got that book done in 2-3 days. We're done. And it doesn't even seem like I did any work to get that done.
Yeah.
Aha.
Right?
Yeah.
Aha. Aha.
So, yeah. And the reason why I went back to the book is the key thing here is, before I get into the book itself, is I'm currently struggling to manage workload. I'm finding myself overwhelmed with so many things going on that I know, wait a second, I'm going to stop just doing things and I'm going to go to a systems expert and I'm going to get some professional advice from a systems expert on how to manage all the things I'm doing because I'm falling behind or I'm feeling the stress. And so I need better systems to retain this. So David Allen, Getting Things Done, the GTD methodology. It's well known. Have you read it? Are you familiar with it?
I read GTD for the first time 14 years ago, the beginning of my life coaching school. It transformed my life. And I love that as I'm smiling, listening to your story, I literally re-listened to it this year for the exact same reasons you just explained. I was overloaded with workload. I was afraid things were going to start falling through the cracks. I was basically out of shape with my organizational systems. I was letting them get a little bit lax. And I'm like, I got to re-up my shit. And I know David Allen's the person to go to. And so I went back and I just really recommitted to my systems. And it made all the difference in the world. I'm not perfect at them. I still have days where I feel disorganized, but for the most part, I'm back to where I don't fear major things falling through the cracks and me losing integrity with people and jobs I care about.
Absolutely. You just hit the nail on the head right there. That closing statement about maintaining integrity because you care about the people, right?
Yep.
And that's the same for me, is I care about the projects and the people that I'm working with. They have a value to me, and I want to make sure I do the best possible job that I can. And so this book is a must-have for anybody who truly wants to represent themselves in the most efficient and effective way possible. If you haven't read Getting Things Done by David Allen, you absolutely need to, because the 3 hours that you're going to invest in learning the systemology And then the few hours or days that are going to follow that of learning how to implement it and training yourself on the system and getting better and better at using it are going to do exactly what he says in the book that they're going to do, is they're going to relieve your stress. They're going to make you feel better about being responsible to the people that you want to be responsible to and the things that are important to you, like your family or your spouse, your kids, your boss, that your coworkers, your team, whoever it is that you want to live up to. And most importantly, yourself, right? The person that you want to look in the mirror and go, yeah, I crushed it today. And literally one day after that book, rereading and finishing it, I had a list of meetings. And as I'm going through the meetings, I'm doing what I'm told in the book, and I'm capturing the data. What are the key action items? Where do I put it? How do I file it? I put it in my calendar. I schedule it here. I put it in this file for later. I follow the action steps, and I immediately feel better about myself for doing a better job. And I feel more at ease about, I did a good job today. And I feel more relaxed about knowing, and this is his key point in the whole book, is that if you've put the information that needs to be accomplished into a trusted system that you're going to be able to rely on, it is not going to get overlooked and forgotten or missed. Right? So I feel good.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it really, really transformed my life, and there's no way I can only say this because this is now 14 years. I've got 14 years of data, really. Not certainly perfect with my systems over that time, but like I have that 14 years of doing this, which is why I can say, and I can look back and I can go, there's no way I would have achieved what I've achieved in business, in life, in any of the creative projects I've done, any of the teams I've been on. There's no way that would have happened to the level of excellence that it has happened without this backing it up.
Boom.
It's a big deal. The only thing I will add to what you shared is that, yes, the high integrity, it secures that, which is super critical. What it also does is that when all of our data and our tasks and all the things that we quote unquote need to remember are captured in that trusted system, we can, anytime we are not engaging our system, we are free to be creative. Our brain isn't spending cycles upon cycles upon cycles worried about forgetting stuff, trying to remember stuff. We are able to write our books. We're able to make a funny video. We're able to laugh with our friends and be deeply present. Like there's so many values that come out of this that are far beyond achievement and go into the realms of connection and love.
Fantastic. You're nailing it today, Melanie.
Thanks.
For me, this, where the systems implementation is really showing its strength is I'm largely involved in organizational development for my company, Flight One. And so right now, working really hard, a huge amount of energy going in from all the participants in the company, all the leadership team. And our systems are kind of fragmented because everybody's got their way of doing things. So for me to have a tool like this, to be able to take it to my team and say, okay, everybody, here's the next task for our organizational development is everybody listen to this 3-hour Audible book, and then we're going to meet and we're going to implement the action items across the board for everybody in the company, where all members of the leadership team are going to have these inbox functions, and everybody's going to go through on Monday and sort through the main things that need to happen. And we're going to have our action items clearly and transparently available to everybody, to each other. So where there's codependencies, where I have projects that we're working on with each other, having a shared workspace like Slack or Planable or Monday.com or Bandcamp or Basecamp or any of the options that people use. If you use these areas to indicate your next actions, then my stress around a project that I don't necessarily have control over goes down.
Right.
Because I don't have to get in touch with that person to get an update. I can see the next action item. I know when the next action is supposed to be performed or completed, and I know when I'm expected to hear something about it. And that takes such a huge amount of stress off my back. And again, like you said, it allows me to go for a workout and focus on my workout
Yeah.
and not focus on the project that I'm thinking about. I'm actually thinking about my steps and my body and the things that I want to be thinking about during my workout or spending time with my family. I'm thinking about my family rather than thinking about my work project, which is trying to take over my mind because I don't know when that next action is going to happen.
Yeah.
Great book. Highly recommend it. It's a huge top 10 winner lifetime
Yeah.
as far as a value added kind of instructional manual on how to do life. You know?
Amen. Hey, freaking man. Oh my God. Well, shall we go on?
You're next.
Let's see. Well, I wrote down on my list. I basically took a bunch of screenshots of my Audible because I have so many like lists of things. And I wanted to include the anti-racism books that I have read and this is not even the past year, but I read more this past year because of the racial divisiveness going on in the world, in the United States. But so this sort of preceded that, but still. So How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi, the New Jim Crow. Who's the author of that? Sorry. It's by Michelle Alexander. And Me and White Supremacy by Layla Saad. There's others like Stamped from the Beginning, also by Ibram X. Kendi. But those books are so enlightening and so important, I think, in order to really get a holistic education around the history of at least the United States, but racism at large, and the systems in the United States, like really learning about mass incarceration, which deeply disturbs me in the United States. Like I for some reason, when I think about different issues that are in our society, that one disturbs me so much. And so much disturbs me. Don't get me wrong. A lot disturbs me. But the idea that millions of people are incarcerated, oh, it's just like, and I'm not suggesting that people not be held accountable for actions. I'm just saying like learning about the systems has really opened my eyes in a really painful way. And I feel very strongly toward sort of the sort of just reform of our systems. Because again, I'm not an anti-cop person in any way. I'm pro-police, but I'm also like, why do we put everything on police? Why does everyone need to be incarcerated? Why are there not more social impact programs that help people and help people heal? We talk so much about healing that it seems like our systems really, really skip that. And they instead just incarcerate so many people, which is such a simplistic way to talk about it. And I am, again, no expert on this subject. I've just learned a lot. And I think it's just so important for us to learn about it because we're not taught it in school.
So this is a really key point. It actually came up in conversation for me just a couple of days ago, unintentionally. I was talking about my life with a good friend of mine, and I was talking about how, as a kid, my biggest fears were the police.
Yeah, I'm deeply afraid of the police, which is so weird. My
Right,
dad's
like
a cop. I'm like, that's got to be related, man. But like, I'm just like,
no.
Anyway, sorry to jump in there, but I'm like
No.
totally afraid of the police.
Yeah, so I live as a child. My biggest concern as a young person was that a police officer would choose to incarcerate me for something, because
So
really I
scary.
didn't have any big fears in the world. I'm like, I'm not worried about getting mugged by somebody or ending up in some bad, like the situations are all pretty manageable. The one that's completely out of our control is there's this power structure that just decides for you whether you're a good or a bad person, without really aligning that with our own like collective values. Our cultural value system is not necessarily reflected in the judicial
laws,
system,
in the judicial system. Yeah,
the judicial system, right? Like, so as a young man, terrified, okay, if anybody can really screw my life up, it's a cop.
Yeah.
And that's wrong. Like, that's something that's really messed up. And as I've gotten older and I've realized, I'm no longer really afraid of cops. I'm very understanding. Like, I'm a huge supporter. This is something came up with for me in ceremony. Again, I was in ceremony. I've had this fear of authority figures, police officers, and I actually have this massive appreciation for
Mm-hmm.
anybody who goes and puts their life into this
Totally.
structure of society that is absolutely mandatory for our society as it stands at this time.
Mm-hmm.
We need people to volunteer to be the order keepers,
Mm-hmm.
but we also need a judicial system and a incarceration system that is actually a real reflection of the criminal, what is defined as criminal, and where the big issues in our society is mental health issues,
Mm-hmm.
criminal issues, and actually the whole private prison system, which
Oh,
is absolutely
God.
freaking terrifying. That
Oh my
the
God. It's
prison system is
so,
privately owned that's just out of control. I don't even want to
ugh,
talk about it. It's so scary.
it's so scary. So this is not a book, but watch 13th on Netflix. Read the new Jim Crow, and that will help you understand. For anyone listening, that will help you understand what we're talking about relative to mass incarceration. It's very, very disturbing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Shoo.
so I don't need
Whoa.
we don't need to go on and on about that, but I really wanted to make sure that that was something I shared because it's been a huge part of my last 2 years, but definitely the last year as well.
It's a big investment, and I have to applaud you for being willing to suffer the trauma of learning about this.
It takes a lot of work. Then that's no joke, actually. Thank you for saying that. I'll take that, and I want people to who are listening to also hear that, to know that reading these books, that listening to these books will challenge you. Like you will need to be committed to seeing them through. Otherwise, it's very easy to quit because they are not fun to listen to and to learn about.
In a lot of these topics, I've at different points in my life, I've chosen to be like, yeah, I'll learn about these atrocities, or I'll learn about, anti-Semitism, learn about slavery, and learn about all these different things. And at some points in my life, I'm just like, man, I can't do this right now. Like, I just need
Yeah.
to turn off the
Yeah.
noise of violence and of hate and all these painful things. And I
Yeah.
live my life with a very clear boundary. Somebody was watching TV the other day, and it wasn't me, and they were watching a show that had some violence, and I walked by and I just caught a glimpse of it, and I was like, oh, and I just immediately walked the other way. I'm like, no, I don't want to see somebody getting their head cracked open. That's outside of the scope of things I allow into my daily experience,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, it's worth saying that. And everybody needs breaks when they take on content like that. And it's interesting because my content list for that I was sharing today is basically a balance of stuff that's really hard to listen to and then stuff that's really supportive of my individual self-love experience. But I'll table that for now, and I want to hear your next one.
well, I've got two, so I'm going to kind of give it to you to choose which one we should go to. The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle,
Mm.
and The Man on the Mountaintop by Susan Trott and Libby Spurr.
Well,
Two different routes.
I'd love to go The Man on the Mountaintop only because I've read The Power of Now and I haven't read The Man on the Mountaintop, so I'd love to hear about it.
Okay, so The Man on the Mountaintop is a made for Audible fiction book.
Cool.
It's very well read. I really have this massive appreciation for the art of storytelling. I think the art of storytelling is one of the most powerful arts in our repertoire, and it is often overlooked or thought of as something that is, kind of in our past, but it's absolutely not true. It is absolutely in our everyday, all the time, right now. You and I are storytelling right now. That's what this is. We're listening to stories, whether it's in the vocal audible form, whether it's in movies, whether it's in books that we've read, whatever version of it is. This is how we pass information along as we tell these stories. And this one is wonderfully read in the sense where there are lots of different readers. So there are narrators doing all the different roles. there's dozens of different roles within it, and they've chosen voices through like the voiceover type approach so that you have an old man's voice for Joe, the lead character, who's the man on the mountaintop. He's a monk.
Mm.
And he's got this, crackly old voice, and he's played really well, and he's got his cadence and his way of speaking. And I just love, I've been, I think, my third time through this book,
Wow,
which
cool.
says a lot.
Yeah, it does.
And it's one of the ones that pulled it up most recently on a long drive as a storybook to listen to while we're driving all day long. And it's wonderfully read. It's wonderfully written. It's nuanced in that it has those wonderful kind of little stories that are stories within stories within stories within stories. And the little interaction that goes on between two of the characters has a greater depth of meaning that relates to the bigger picture story of the book. And it's a wonderful adventure. I'm not going to do any spoiler alerts on it. I'm going to leave the whole thing for anybody who wants to dive in. But I'd love to hear any questions that you have.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really great to inject fiction and heartily produced, like a really quality execution of story into all of the educational sort of self-help growth work that we listen to and read, at least for me. And I rarely do that. I'm so voracious for all like this continuing education about lots of different topics that are nonfiction. I read very little fiction. So it just more excites me. I did actually put one book into my queue this year called The Overstory because I heard it was really amazing. I think Tim Ferriss recommended it. And I have started listening to it a couple of times. I've not been able to really get into it, but the reason I got it is because it was recommended by someone I trust and because it is about trees. It's about human stories and stuff, but the undercurrent of the story is about trees, and I'm so fascinated and called to trees. So I added it to my queue for that reason, so I'll let you know what I think when I get through it.
Have you read The Alchemist?
I have.
So I think The Alchemist is another book in this. I think Alchemist is one of the best books of all time.
So good.
As far as a fiction story that really teaches us life lessons. It's really, it's got a lot of value to it. It's not just tell me a story. It's teach me about life, and I think this Man on the Mountaintop book is the same genre where it's really got those deeper life stories, the values, the things that we're going to learn. They remind us about how to think about who we are and why we do the things we do. And it's got a lot of great reflection in it. And I love The Alchemist for that same reason. And there's so many books. Ishmael's another one of my favorites that falls into that category.
Oh, it's so funny because like every book on my list includes storytelling, every single one. I want to make sure I say this book also, and I'll go with the next two. Know My Name by Chanel Miller is powerful. It's about the woman who was sexually assaulted by the swimmer. I forget it, the actual name of the guy, but like it's an intense story about her process through that assault and then through the subsequent legal battle and public relations terror. It's like really, really heartbreaking and so, so brave to hear her story. It's just like, there's no way something like that is more, it's like just so powerful through the modality of storytelling. Like hearing it from her, it's like it tells her story and it's really, really, really powerful. And again, it's another heavier share. But again, that's part of my year is really looking at things that I wouldn't want to look at, looking more deeply at things like that. So like I mentioned 13th relative to the racism and mass incarceration. Similarly with sexual assault, Athlete A on Netflix is another really great documentary to watch, a very powerful one on sexual assault and survivorship of that. So yeah, Know My Name by Chanel Miller. Couldn't recommend that more. And then another storytelling book, which I'll go to next, is one in support of my being and my personal self-love. They're all in support of my own growth and love and all of that. But Untamed by Glennon Doyle is phenomenal. It's totally her story. She talks about her own process through depression and realizing that she's basically ending her marriage, and she's a writer and she's an activist, and there's just so much richness in her story as well through the micro stories that she shares. So it's a bigger story, but she does such an excellent job through like the chapters, the micro stories that she shares around certain insights and aha moments or big pivotal moments in her life. It's just so relatable and so deeply powerful because you can see yourself on every page pretty much, even if you haven't lived her exact experience.
That's such a powerful perspective that books bring to us, right? Is the internal reflection of shifting our point of view of how we see ourselves, or bringing our own lives into an awareness where we weren't necessarily so easily spotlighting that awareness prior to just reading the story, right?
So good. Oh, it's so good. It's so fascinating how books really and truly make us feel less alone in the world because we're connecting to a real person. That's why I love nonfiction so much. And it's not that fiction can't make that happen for us, because I believe a human had to come up with that story. So there's still recognition of the shared experience in a fiction story. But yeah, there's something about nonfiction for me, hearing real people's stories, that really feels supportive to me.
Okay, so I want to talk about fiction, nonfiction, and kind of the line in there a little bit, because there's a series. I didn't read them recently, but I recently passed them along to a friend who has been just engorged, and she's already on the third book in the series. And it is the Clan of the Cave Bear series by Jean M. Orwell.
Cool.
Have you ever read these?
No, I haven't, but my brother did when I was a kid, and he loved them.
So I read every book in the series a number of years ago, and I think there's like 7 or 8 big, thick fiction books in the series. And for me, I know the stories are fiction because we don't have records of prehistoric times to reflect on, but the author's done an excellent job of creating the best possible representation that we could of a time that she could of a time that we don't really have any record of. Mm-hmm. And using as many real references as possible to make it as historically accurate as possible. So I love the whole story. That's an excellent series for anybody who wants to dive into it. And I want to tip the dial just one more notch to the right. And I'm currently reading, almost done, John McPhee. And now I explored this author again because of Tim Ferriss, we talk about often. Mm-hmm. When I hear as much ranting and raving about the author, I'm like, all right, I'm going to try one of his books out. So I look through the what do you call the list of somebody's books? It's a discography. The library, yeah. So it's a discography for music where it's a library for authors. So I looked through their library, and I saw one called The Survival of the Bark Canoe. And it looked like a nice small book, which I feel is a great place to start when I'm exploring something new. Mm-hmm. And it's a fiction story but it's a true story. So the characters are real, the accounts are real, all of the things are real, but the story has been created out of real characters. Cool. And it's incredibly accurate, incredibly... Get my lips working again.
It's a very exciting topic.
It's incredibly detailed. And here's why it was so appealing to me is my whole life I've wanted to build a bark canoe. I've had this desire to build birch bark canoe at some point in my life because it's from the area where I grew up, where they were most used. And I've been on the canoe routes and I know a lot of the history and I've paddled a lot. So the book resonated with me. So I got the book, and as I've read it, I've realized it's almost literally a manual of how to build bark canoes with all the stories of the world's leading bark canoe builder, his mm-hmm. story, and the story of all his canoes. And it's a wonderful... I'm currently reading it aloud. So cool. I've mentioned before I love to do this. something I really recommend for any family. If
Mm-hmm.
you have somebody that you could spend time with and you would normally watch TV, turn the TV off, pick up a book, read a page or two, read a chapter or two, practice reading aloud. I love taking turns and having different books with my family of whoever. I might have a book that I'm reading, and then I might be receiving another book that has a different storyline, and it's great because you can each develop the characters in your voices and learn about the actual stories. The Survival of the Bark Canoe, John McPhee, loving his writing style. I actually just bought another book from him as a second one called Draft 4, and it's on the writing process, and I'm about to open it and use it as a guide for me to continue writing my own book.
I love it. I love it. I can't wait to read your book.
I'm back writing again and super excited because it's coming together for me. I'm figuring it out.
Take your time. It takes time. Shit, if anyone knows that, it's me. It's all good. It's a process, and that's why I have such respect for any author. I really do. Any author that puts anything together, it takes something to do that. But the next two, I have so many on my list that it was really hard for me to pick. It's actually quite an interesting and kind of awesome reflection to look back on my just year of reading and be like, damn, girl, you did some good. You took in some info. But recently, so this actually goes with The Body Keeps the Score, but this is one I read earlier in the year. It's called Burnout by Emily and Amelia Nagoski. And the biggest thing, there's a ton in that on just, I don't have enough time to tell you about it, but the biggest takeaway I took from that was we might be through a stressor and we won't have processed the stress. So like being triggered and being in a stress is different than processing the stress, which connects totally exactly to The Body Keeps the Score. It's just a magnified view at that singular nugget of insight. It's like going, okay, I'm not freaking out anymore. I'm not in immediate danger, but my body is still sort of holding something. So yeah, just looking at that. And the other book I want to share is Radical Acceptance by Tara Brach. I don't know why I keep bringing up Tim Ferriss, but I've read a lot of his recommendations this year. And that one, he's recommended that book for multiple years, and I have not read it. And I read it this year, and damn, it is powerful. It is nothing new, but it is a powerful look through storytelling and actionable insight about accessing deep self-love and deep self-acceptance. It's beautiful. I highly, highly recommend it. I've told all of my clients and now all of you.
That's great.
Yeah.
I have a couple things I wanted to say. One is I have a note in one of my systems right now, one of my trusted systems for reminding me of the things I need to do. One of the notes that I wrote for myself recently was extracted from a meditation, and it was said, be unapologetically me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it is that just truly, like, just don't apologize for who I am. Work to be better at who I am every single day.
Yeah.
But I'm not apologizing for who I am, and just
as
long as I'm being my true self. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask our audience as much as I want to ask Melanie, because I'm sure Melanie does. Do you have a book list, movie list, show list? When somebody says something, or you're listening to a podcast, you're listening to this or whatever, and you hear a reference to something come up, do you have a place where you jot that down, that it's not just on another list of 100 other things of paper?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. It goes right into my trusted system. Going back to David Allen, it literally goes right into my to-do list.
Yeah.
And I schedule it accordingly.
So I've got the book list in my phone, in my notes. So I have one for books and one for movies. so that I know that as soon as I'm like, what do I feel like, like pop that open and I can dive in there anytime.
I'm like you. As soon as something comes across my radar, I buy it. Like I don't fuck around.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got a stack like this of books on my shelf right in here in the van.
Yeah.
They're like, wait for me to read them, that I've invested in recently, because I know that I want to get to them. It's just a matter of how much time do I have to do that.
Yeah.
And so I think we're about to wrap this up, but I want to touch one more thing.
Do it.
At the beginning of this call, you said, hey, I'm wearing my ski clothes already because I'm going skiing as soon as I'm done.
Yes.
That's a getting thing done action, is put the clothes on that you're gonna use to do the thing that you need to get done. And so I heard you mention that, and I'm like, oh, that's exactly one of the things, right?
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, I love it. I could list so many other books. Like I listen to entrepreneur books a lot too, but because like we talk so much about healing and self-love and all of those concepts, like just make no mistake, team, family, that I'm also listening to a lot of business books, a lot of entrepreneurship concepts, which don't feel necessarily new, but the reiteration and the iteration of these concepts over time matters. So like, that's why if I can read 30, 40 books in a year that seem like they touch the same things, but they really, really make a difference in terms of the integration of the learning. So it's like, listen to something once and maybe you'll retain something. Listen to concepts multiple times over, and it's just, you get a lot more from that type of in-depth type of work. So anyway, do you have any last ones you want to share, Jay, before we wrap up?
I just want to tell you the ones that are coming up for me, those entrepreneur books. I've got Shoe Dog on my list, which is the story of Nike.
Cool.
And
I want to read that.
Open, which is Andre Agassi's story. And Finite and Infinite Games is another one that's on my purchase list right now.
I love it. Those are all, I've not read any of those. The one that I'm reading currently is Beyond Entrepreneurship 2.0, which is also really good.
Yeah, I have. So, that's already in my list. I'm already on it.
I love it. I love it. Well, family, per usual, we love you so much. We're so glad you're here. We hope this episode's been of value. Let us know if you end up reading any of these, if you get any nuggets from something that we recommended or just the episode at all. We would love to hear from you, for real. So hit us up on Instagram, trustthejourney.today. Slide into our DMs. Why do people say that? Like, that just cracks me up.
I don't say that.
Oh my God.
Message me directly, Jay.
How about send me a message? Yeah. Sorry. But that's it. We love you. Any final thoughts, my dear?
It's just lots of gratitude, super appreciation out there to every author who does the work to share the story and to help grow and develop our whole being of persons, all of us together in this world. And you know what? I'm going to read this because this is a beautiful way to finish this episode. So perfect. A friend shared this translation of the Lord's Prayer from the original Arabic. Truly beautiful. Heavenly Source, you who are everywhere, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done here and now in all eternity. Fill us with the power of thy grace and free us from the chains which we bind each other. Lead us out of temptation, free us from ourselves, and lend us the power to be one with you. Teach us the true power of forgiveness. May this holy moment be the ground from which all our future actions grow. The power of writing.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. We
love you.